What's up? Hello, my name is Emma, and today I am going to be recommending books based off of my teenage phases. So I have what you would call an obsessive personality, meaning when I discover new hobbies and interests, they kind of take over my life. And as adolescence is a grand time of identity exploration, I have been through a lot of teenage phases. So today I am going to be pairing those teenage phases with YA book recommendations. So the first real phase I went through as a teenager is just like a rite of passage for teens in mid to late 2000s, and that is my scene phase. I'm actually so devastated that the remaining photos I have from this time just do not do it justice. I think the best way to help you visualize it is to say that I had a complete folder on my computer desktop called Emmography. It was emo and photography. Emmography. Oh my god, I just remembered my Facebook name was Emma Grace Says Roar. And it contained nothing but dramatic black and white and color splash selfies of me featuring lots of ripped jeans, tutus, teased hair, hair bows, and raccoon stripe hair extensions. Oh god, and so much eyeliner. But a book I feel 13-year-old Emma Grace Says Roar would enjoy is The Archived by Victoria Schwab. The Archived is like an old school booktube favorite to me. It's a YA paranormal fantasy series about a girl named Mac who is sort of like a keeper of lost souls and stops dangerous entities from escaping into the real world. It sort of has this like Twilight vibe because it's paranormal with a little bit of mystery and just a healthy dose of teenage angst. And like Scene Emma also wanted to legally change her name to Bella because she was such a twihard, so I feel like this would be a really great suggestion for her. The Archived is so good though. I'm absolutely gutted that it seems like this series is never going to end because we got the first 2 books years ago and the publisher just like doesn't seem interested in finishing it out. One day, just maybe one day. Another big phase I went through in my teenage years was dance. Now dance isn't exactly a phase because it's one of the only constants throughout my entire life, as I started when I was like 3 years old and I still take dance classes now. But my adolescent years are totally marked by a huge passion for dance where I spent so many hours in my kitchen learning choreography off of YouTube and making up my own dances. So when I think of younger me whose like dream was to be a rockette one day, the best book I think I could recommend to her is Tiny Pretty Things by Sona Sharapatra and Danielle Clayton. This is a contemporary duology about 3 girls who are all students at a ballet academy in New York and are competing for the top spot in the next performance. This series is just dripping with drama, and as someone who was also super obsessed with Degrassi The Next Generation and Skins, I feel like I would have lived for this book, even though when I read it at the time, I actually thought the drama was a little bit excessive. And I feel like this book would just be the perfect choice because also at the time, even though dance was something that brought me so much joy, it also became part of my disordered eating habits. And so I had this complication relationship with it where it was making me super happy, but it was also a little unhealthy. And actually one of the main characters in Tiny Pretty Things also is dealing with an eating disorder. So I feel if this book had been around at this time and I had read it, I really would have felt very validated in the emotions I was feeling. I would have loved this book as a teenager, and honestly, if you're the type of person that could set aside like some flaws in books for a really entertaining and drama-filled story, I think it's something that almost any dancer could enjoy. So the next phase I went through as a teenager was a Christian phase. In my freshman year of high school, I became super involved in a youth group with pretty much all of my friends. I became a very devout Christian. I went on retreats with my youth group all the time, and I have so many fond memories being with these people and being involved in my church. As we are talking about religion, I'm sure many of you are expecting me to choose Heretics Anonymous by Katie Henry for this one, as this book deals with an atheist going to a Catholic school. But the book I'm actually going to go with is Nice Try Jane Sinner by Leanne Olkey. This is the story of a girl who is expelled from high school and begins community college in order to rake up some credits, and while she is there, she ends up participating in a sort of like a Big Brother another on-campus type reality show. Now, that synopsis definitely doesn't sound like it has anything to do with the religion, but Jane actually comes from a very religious community, and one of the driving reasons for her joining House of Orange is to escape this household. As Jane is leaving her faith, her longtime friends start to sort of alienate her because they are still a part of the youth group she left. I had an identical experience when leaving my church as well, and it was a very distressing time because like I had never been in a position where tons of people had just sort of dropped me before, and I feel like reading this at the time would have really made me feel comforted to know that someone else also went through this. And within all of the great dry humor and shenanigans of A Nice Try, Jane Sinner, there's actually a theme of mental health along the way, which is also tied to my experiences leaving church. So clearly I have a lot in common with Jane, and even further, she starts studying psychology at school, and when I had left the church, that's when I actually got really invested in wanting to study psychology and maybe become a counselor someday. So this whole thing was just a big turning point in my life, and I feel like at the time I could have related to Jane so well. It's a really unique story. It's super funny and just like painfully underrated. I would love it if more people would read Nice Try, Jane Sinner. So if anything I have said interests you, like especially the Big Brother thing, you should totally pick this book up. The next major teenage phase I went through was a Whovian phase. I first got into Doctor Who because of the YouTuber Charlie Is So Cool Likes band. They had a Time Lord rock band, and I loved their music, so I started watching the episodes that they were writing songs about. I fell in love with Doctor Who immediately. I have rewatched the new Who seasons countless times over the years. I had so many friends that were equally as obsessed with it at the time, and I feel like we just did nothing but watch Doctor Who and talk about Doctor Who. So the book I would recommend to this little wannabe Amy Pond is Aurora Rising by Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. I just recently read Aurora Rising. It is all about an intergalactic squad on a spaceship and a girl who has mysteriously survived 200 years into the future. Now, while Aurora Rising and Doctor Who are by no means on the same level, I do feel like Aurora Rising has some potential to appeal to the same audience. The whole atmosphere of the story really reminds me of the adventures the Doctor goes on with his companions, with a few alien species thrown in there to spice things up. I had some mixed feelings on Aurora Rising. I really loved it in the beginning, but by the end, I had so many major gripes with it. Luckily, younger me was a consumer of fiction with drastically lower standards than I have today, so most of the problems I've experienced in probably all of these books would be totally irrelevant to her now. But while adult me wasn't wowed by this book, my teenage self absolutely would have loved all the sci-fi elements, the action, the battles, and definitely the cast of characters and romances. I just feel like it would be the perfect fit for a Time Lord lovin', bow tie wearing, fish finger and custard eating gal like myself. Can you tell 11 is my favorite? My next teenage phase is one of the most significant in my entire high school career, and that is my EDM phase. I fell in love with electronic music when I was 13 years old, and my best friend introduced me to Bass Hunter, and this obsession definitely peaked from ages like 16 to 18 when I was actually able to go to electronic concerts in the city. I was so hardcore into the EDM scene. I was a total candy kid making things out of pony beads all day long. No joke, one of my fondest memories from high school is not one of the music festivals I actually attended and experienced myself, but staying up all night for almost 3 days straight watching the EDC Las Vegas live stream from my kitchen. It was just my absolute life. I lived and breathed electronic music, and I feel like I really am the person I am today because of it. And so this recommendation is a pretty unique one because it's actually a book I read during this time, and that is This Song Will Save Your Life by Leila Sales. This book actually has nothing to do with electronic music, but it is about a girl who is very anxious and she can't seem to fit in with her peers, but she starts to find herself in music when she discovers an underground nightclub and starts to DJ. I actually wrote my college entrance essay on how electronic music really saved me from my depression and suicidality, and I feel like it just really meshes with the theme of this book so well with how music can save lives. Elise and I have extremely different tastes in music, but our stories are exactly the same, and it was so immensely comforting to find someone who was going through the exact same things as myself, but were able to find hope through it all. I have not read This Song Will Save Your Life since 2014, so I would absolutely love to reread it in my adulthood and see how I feel about it years later. But if you've been watching my channel for a very long time, you know that I always say, like, recommending this book is like giving away a piece of my heart because it is so close to me and my identity, and I'm always happy to spread that message into the world so hopefully others can find comfort in it as well. We have made it to my final teenage phase, and that is my obsession with England. 15 to 18-year-old Emma was so engrossed in England, from pop culture like music and TV to culture and history. I have just been so obsessed with England since. I literally had Union Jack everything from shoes to shorts to shirts to sunglasses to my entire room being covered in Union Jacks. An accurate statement would be like, I thought loving England was a personality trait, which is very true, but honestly it was super wholesome and sweet, and just like younger me doesn't deserve that kind of shade. Now before I jump into this last book recommendation, I have actually been holding off on making this video for like a full year now. This has just been chilling in my notes section of my phone, waiting until I had the perfect lineup of books. And so the book that so perfectly captures my love for England is Again But Better by Christine Riccio. Actually, I am only just remembering as I'm talking about it that the reason I came up with this video idea was because Christine had announced the synopsis to Again But Better. It was revealed that it was about this girl who wanted a second chance studying abroad in London, and I was like, wow, this book really reminds me of how 17-year-old me was obsessed with England. I should make a video about my teenage phases and the books I associate with them. So clearly I loved Again But Better. It is by no means a flawless work of literature, but this book speaks so deeply to that part of my soul who was in high school and was so lonely and isolated from her peers, and one of the things that brought her the most joy was England. Again But Better makes me feel so nostalgic for all the joy I felt at that time, even though this is a book I've read 7 years after the height of that obsession. Shane is super relatable to younger me, and her story is absolutely everything I could have wanted my life to be at the time. Everything in this book is everything I loved about young adult literature when I first discovered it in the midst of my England obsession, and so it is a very sentimental and special book to me for that reason. So that is it for my video on book recommendations based on my teenage phases. Not only was I inspired by Again But Better for this video, but I also sort of wanted it to be a combination of two of my favorite videos I've produced over the last few years. They are Things You Don't Know About Me and recommending books based off of my childhood photos, because I kind of wanted to do this combination of taking things from my history and recommending books about them, but also giving you guys a little bit of insight on what I was like before I started my booktube channel. In the comments below, I would love to hear you guys give me a book recommendation based off of one of your teenage phases that you've either gone through or might even be going through now. But that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you soon for a new one. Bye!